Welcome to another episode of the Chicks on the Right podcast. Today we have a very special guest. It's Brandi Kruse. She's host of the Undivided podcast. She is a recovered TDS sufferer. Recently, she participated in the roundtable at the White House about Antifa violence, and we'll get to that roundtable in just a second. But first, we want to hear what cured you of your self-described TDS.
Gosh, a lot of time, apparently. It took maybe almost 10 years. I didn't come around to President Trump until about 2 weeks before the assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania. And I'd been slowly being red-pilled, but not like quite to the extent that I could let go of my TDS. I mean, I live in Seattle, and I had been a mainstream journalist in Seattle for 10 years, 10, 12 years. And so I think getting out of that environment, I decided to quit that job in TV news in November of 2021 to launch my independent show. And I think you don't realize the extent to which you're in this really toxic echo chamber until you're out of it. And you can start to sort of think for yourself a little bit. So I think that helped quite a bit. But there were also some really pivotal moments for me where I realized how deeply dishonest the media ecosystem was. The coverage of the 2020 riots and what we saw in Seattle was pretty bad. To see it downplayed was mind-boggling to me. Also, the coverage of the pandemic, the real inability or lack of desire to question anything that the government was doing, despite the profound impact it was having on people's lives. I thought that's not what our role is supposed to be. And so as I started to lose faith and trust in the media, I was able to see through a lot of what they said about President Trump. And it was like this veil was just ripped off. And I was like, wow, this is so much more pleasant. I mean, I'm still critical of him in some areas. I was critical of him on the show yesterday, but I don't take him literally anymore. And that was the key. I had to stop taking the media seriously. And then I had to stop taking the president literally, everything he said. And life just became a lot better, easier, and really just more productive for me to not spend so much time dwelling on the occupant of the White House.
Did people turn on you? Like, did you have a lot of friends that were kind of in the same camp as you? And then when you decided to start thinking, just on your own terms, did they reject that?
I mean, I had family members, and
really
to be clear, I was never far left. I would never have considered myself a Democrat. I mean, I voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. Okay. I voted for Joe Jorgensen, the Libertarian candidate for president in 2020, because I just wanted my freedoms back during the pandemic, and then voted for Trump in 2024. So I've always been right of Seattle center. And that's not that might still be a cuckoo liberal in other areas. So, I was always independent minded. I've always considered myself an independent. But when I went to the White House specifically, I mean, when I decided to vote for Donald Trump, certainly I had people who canceled their subscriptions to our show, wouldn't watch it anymore, wouldn't pay for it, nothing. And then after I went to the White House, I actually had a pretty significant falling out with family members who questioned my integrity, thought I was doing it for money, or it was just wild to see. And didn't like the assertion that if I said I was cured from TDS, that must mean they still have TDS. And of course, they think that they're absolutely on the right side of history and Donald Trump can do nothing right. So it was actually, between us and your viewers, obviously, I spent quite a bit of time after my White House trip in tears over a fallout with a family member who I've, obviously known for 37 years of my life. And it was really, really hard for me. But I'll also say, in this period of time, the last year, I've learned a lot about, how do I say this? I've learned a lot about how difficult it probably was to be a Trump supporter all those years for people. And I think at times I was very sanctimonious about Donald Trump and probably a little condescending toward people who supported him and a little alienating. And so now I'm getting a little bit of a taste of my own medicine, and it makes me feel very bad for how I probably acted all those years.
That's some interesting self-reflection, though.
Yeah.
And we're excited to hear about how you and other citizen journalists were received in that roundtable and what you think is going to come of it. Like, were there specific actions that were outlined that they said, thank you for what you've said, and here's what's going to happen next?
Yeah. So I will say, Antifa and left-wing violence is an issue that is incredibly important to me to raise awareness for. And it was even when I was in mainstream news. Seattle, I always told people, I joked that my full-time job was covering protests and riots. It's just a thing in Seattle. And leadership in the Pacific Northwest, Seattle, Portland, they just accept some level of left-wing violence as just a regular course of life. It's so strange. And this goes back to when I first came to Seattle as a really young journalist. I was covering crime and justice, and that was around the time the Occupy movement was taking off. It was pretty bad here. And then that rolled into, we had annual May Day riots, along with marches for worker and immigrant rights. And then, of course, the BLM movement, the takeover of 6 blocks of the city. I had been assaulted personally on numerous occasions, watched my crew assaulted. We were mobbed the night that the autonomous zone, CHOP as it's been called, in Seattle was formed, had to seek refuge in a fire station. More recently, in June, I was attacked. Somebody tried to blind me with wasp killer outside the DHS facility in Tukwila, south of Seattle. So I've had a lot of, over 15 years, I was sort of public enemy number one for Antifa in the Pacific Northwest for a long time. So to be able to go to the White House and just at the very base level, have someone as powerful as the president and the head of the FBI and the head of DHS and DOJ care so much about raising awareness for that issue that they'll have us there to talk about it was deeply meaningful to me. And so I appreciate that beyond words. The message I wanted to get across to those gathered at the White House was basically like, we got 3.5 years. We weren't there. I wasn't there to get the media to believe that Antifa is a real thing. That is a fool's errand. I wasn't there to convince the American people, don't care anymore. I've tried 15 years to convince Seattle people that this is a real problem. I don't care to do it anymore. I just want them to come down with the full weight of the federal government and do anything we can in 3.5 years to fix it. Have they done that? No. I think that me and some other participants of the White House panel have been outspoken. Nick Sorter, Julio Rosas, Andy Ngo, that we'd like to see a little bit more bite. Certainly there's a case in Texas that they're trying to build that I think is significant. But I mean, Portland continues, maybe not to the extent it was, but we still have these factions. I haven't seen any significant uptick in arrests. They have one of the things that was requested during the panel that they just did was declare Antifa a terror organization globally.
Which they should, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's something.
A lot to be done. And the panel was, a month and a half ago, so maybe I should give them some time.
Although, you say the most important thing wasn't getting people to just recognize that it's a thing. But there are so many people on the left, like a lot of our leaders, that were saying, oh, no, they don't even exist. We could show a compilation of those people. But if you are, we know they exist. But if you are talking to, just regular people out there in America, and what would be the most surprising thing to those people, to Jane and Joe Q America, about Antifa and what they're doing and what they continue to do?
Well, it's not spontaneous. It's not spontaneous. In terms of surprising, I mean, the ties to the unions. I mean, I really believe, and I've tried to tread lightly because I don't want to be sued by the big unions, but I really have been consistently shocked by the number of people who are arrested for riot-adjacent crimes who are members of the teachers union, the Washington Education
Teachers Union. Yeah, I was going to ask, who's behind it? Where's the money coming from? Who's behind it? Who's teachers?
Yeah, I'm not saying they're funding it directly, but for instance, one of their favorite things to do here is blockade things, right? And they've slowly elevated and escalated that kind of activity over the years because there's no consequence. They're like, wow, we can block a city street. None of us get arrested. Okay, great. What's next? Oh, let's block a bridge. That worked fine. What's next? Let's block Interstate 5 in downtown Seattle during rush hour for 5 hours. No consequences. Let's block the entrance to Seattle-Tacoma International Airport with very few consequences as well. And it always surprised me the number of people who are unmasked as public school teachers. And I'm like, that's not a coincidence. Okay. That's not a coincidence.
Yeah.
Then how do people there not get sick of that when they are obviously personally impacted? Why do they tolerate it?
Gosh, that is the $1 million question. In the moment, they don't. In the moment, they're angry about it. For instance, when I-5 was blocked, I want to say it was for 5 hours. Could have been more or less, but it was around there. And people were angry about it. And there were ambulances that couldn't get through. They were blocking the area right before the off-ramp to the region's most prominent trauma center where people are brought in life or death emergencies.
Oh, my gosh.
And, I think the thing is, there's twofold. Citizens usually only know what they hear, right? And so the media's treatment of these incidents is paramount towards shaping the public's understanding of what happened. And the media just downplays them. I mean, you would never see them treat these instances in the way they do if it was right wing. If it were right wing, like if the Proud Boys showed up and took over 6 square blocks of the city of Seattle, patrolled the area with AR-15 rifles that were handed to them out of the trunk of a car by a guy who dubbed himself the Chop Warlord, and surrounded a police precinct that it had to be abandoned. How many freaking days do you think that would have been allowed to?
Oh my gosh.
Out of control. 1 hour, and our governor and the mayor and every member of Congress on the Democratic side would have had a press conference. They would have sent in the National Guard and the state police. No, here, because it's left-wingers, they let it happen for a month until people were killed there. And then they're like, okay, maybe it's done. I mean, our mayor called it the summer of love. Like, get a grip. If anyone can, and this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about that made my red pilling, is like, we had been through 6 months in 2020 of violent left-wing extremism, cop cars on fire in downtown Seattle. People might remember this scene of a guy who turned out to be a security guard, a Marine, disarming 2 Antifa riders of stolen police rifles that they'd taken out of a cop car. That was my security guard who put me behind a potted plant and was like, stay here. And then comes back with these 2 police rifles that he disarmed of these riders. And they're even downplaying that kind of activity. It was crazy to me. And then January 6th happened. And I was like, yeah, that's embarrassing. But then the media treated it so significantly different than what happened in Seattle. I'm like, wait a second. Why is that so much different than everything that you downplayed? We even had city council members up on the front lines in the lead up to CHOP, encouraging the violence. And I'm like, now you want me to like be angry about January 6th? It just is crazy. It was crazy.
I remember living through all the like the Chaz and the Chop and the making fun of that when we were on the radio. It was just nuts. So like, do you think that's the most unhinged? Like, what would be the most unhinged Antifa story that you could tell thus far?
Oh, it has to be Chaz Chop. I don't know how you...
Is it that what it is?
Yeah, I mean, it has to be Chaz Chop. And there's so many elements of that are so, hypocritical, from the characterization from our mayor, Jenny Durkin at the time, who went on CNN and said, who knows, it might be a summer of love as they're evacuating a police precinct. And literally, I was on Fox 13, which is the local Fox affiliate at the time. I was our political reporter, and I had sources telling me that police were about to abandon the East Police Precinct, which is in an area of the city known as Capitol Hill, very dense, needs a police precinct there because of the crime issues. And the police department, the mayor's office, denied it. No, we're not. No, we're not. An hour later, I get a call. I stand by my reporting. An hour later, I get a call from my photographer who was on scene, sort of staged in an area. He said, hey, Brandi, they just backed U-Haul trucks up to the garage of the East Precinct. They're moving out a bunch of stuff, including plaques off the wall. They're denying our reporting, and then they're literally taking out, guns, ammo, all these things. They're taking plaques off the wall. An hour after, it's just insane. And then they abandon the area. They're nowhere to be found. And they leave this core area of the city completely at the up to the will of these far left extremists. And I mentioned there was a guy named Chaz, I can't remember his name. He was the Chaz Warlord, Chop Chaz, they called it.
Warlord.
God, I can't remember what his name was. He pulls up, they pull up this vehicle, pop the trunk, and they're recording this and streaming it out live. They're proud of it. And he's got all these AR-15 rifles. And keep in mind, our state had just banned the sale of these. So there had just been a law. So you have these Democrats who for years, including at the time our Attorney General, who's now our Governor, Bob Ferguson, very anti-weapon of war, right? Unless it's the Chop Warlord handing them to just strangers. He'd wave people over. Some of them didn't even look 18. And he'd hand them a gun, and they'd go around the Chop, and they'd set up barricades with just crap they stole, bikes and all sorts of stuff. And they'd sit there with their guns, and they'd dictate who could come and go.
Oh my gosh.
Which is crazy because you think about what they were there protesting against, a police state, right?
Yeah, right.
Police use of force. Those same Chop security guards shot and killed a teenager. And so it's just like, wait a second, you think police used force too quickly, yet you murdered someone? And that case has never been solved, but it just...
Make it make sense.
Make it make sense. You can't.
Right?
Does it just make your head explode then when you hear prominent Democrats, I mean, I can think of one off the top of my head, J.B. Pritzker, just completely denying the existence of Antifa writ large. Like they just won't even acknowledge what we all see and hear with our own eyes and ears.
Yeah. And to a point, I'm like, I don't even care if you call them Antifa. Like, okay, is that tripping you up? You know, is that a problem for you that we gave them a name? Okay, let's not give them a name then. Let's just call them left-wing extremists. Because now they're focusing on that little thing. Like, oh, well, Antifa just stands for anti-fascist. Like, Antifa is just a figment of our imagination. Okay, let's just set it aside, okay? Let's just call them, let's judge them and arrest them and prosecute them, not based on a label, but based off of their actions. And I think that's appropriate, right? But, you know, even when we were doing that, they still will find a way to excuse it in some way and to downplay it in some way. So they just look for whatever convenient angle they can to deflect. In this case, it's, oh, Antifa, that's not even a real thing. And so you just got to keep bringing the issue back to their actual behavior and their actions. But, you know, in Seattle, I've witnessed firsthand, many of these are the same people. And they're anarchists at their core, right? And maybe we call them anarchists. And they just want the total, like, takedown of the government, of any sort of structure. They want anarchy. And so they're at everything. It doesn't matter what it is. Bashing in windows of the Amazon Go stores because down to capitalism, like they're there. Oh hate the police, they're there. Hate ICE, they're there. They just want anarchy. And so they're going to show up whenever there's an opportunity to carry that out.
Yeah.
And they travel, right? Like it's the same people that are going from city to city just causing chaos.
Yeah, I asked, that's one of the specific things I asked the White House at the Antifa roundtable is I want you to take as many of these cases as possible, but also to look into the interstate travel aspect of this, because we have Antifa that they make calls online on Discord channels to come back and forth between Seattle and Portland and provide basically mutual aid to Antifa, like, hey, let's go down to Portland, let's come up to Seattle. And so we've seen an awful lot of that. And I think it puts their activities squarely in the purview then of the federal government. But I also think, you know, one of the things, for instance, and I'm selfish in this regard, but I want the feds to take my case from the Tukwila Police Department involving a masked individual who used wasp killer to try to blind me at an anti-ICE protest. I don't think local police have the tools and frankly, the resources to be able to try to track and identify that individual who covered their identity so well. But one of the reasons I want them to do cases like that, we need to show that putting a mask on is not going to guarantee that you don't end up in prison. And I think the federal government, I mean, look at what they did with January 6th, right? Not that look, I think January 6th was an embarrassment. And for any conservatives who try to downplay it, like if this had been BLM, they did the exact same thing, you would also still be talking about it.
Totally.
Right.
So, but I do believe that those people were politically prosecuted in the sense that, like, I've watched left-wing extremists get off the hook with all sorts of things with maybe a slap on the wrist, and you're talking 20 years in prison. So I agree with that. But if you assaulted a police officer, I don't think you should have been pardoned. But when you look at how they track those people down, they basically used federal resources, you know, FBI, DOJ, and they found who was all on a cell phone in this vicinity during this time. They literally years later were tracking down those people, showing up at their doors, including in Washington state, saying, hey, your cell phone was being used in the vicinity of the Capitol on January 6, 2021. What were you doing there? And so you're telling me the same FBI and DOJ can't do that with the people who were outside the ICE facility in Tukwila? You're telling me the FBI, DOJ can't do that with what's happening in Portland? You have the same technology, probably even better now, 5 years later. You're the same DOJ, the same FBI. So if you could use those tools to track down years later every single person in the vicinity of the U.S. Capitol, certainly you can do it for the anti-ICE terrorists.
Yeah. It's just a matter of do they want to do that? You know what I mean? Yeah. So a last thing for me, I don't know, you may have another question, Mock, but
I do have one more. It's okay.
And if at the round table, I know you got to meet a lot of really cool people. Did you meet Trump? And if you did, what was the most surprising thing about him, in your opinion?
Well, he was in rare form. So it was, one of the coolest things about that moment for me wasn't even being there for Antifa to talk about it. That was the day that they had a peace deal in the Middle East. And so I'm sitting, we're in this U form, right? And the cameras are on the president, but off to my left, I'm on the very end of the U. So there's these double doors that are open. If you're not familiar with the White House, like right when you come in the main entrance, there's this long hallway. So these double doors are open and I glance over and I see Marco Rubio in the double doors, maybe 20, 30 minutes in. And I'm like, that's weird. And he looked like he's trying to look at the president, like trying to get his attention. And I go to Andy No next to me. I'm like, something is going on. And Andy
oh
looks,
my gosh.
and then we look back and the vice president has joined him and they're pacing and the vice president's on the phone and they're pacing. And then all of a sudden Trump calls in Marco Rubio and he goes, oh, Marco's here. Come on in, Marco. And you can tell Marco's like, oh, good God, this is not the moment. And so then he sits down and he whispers, you have that picture where he's whispering to the president, kind of very similar, like George Bush 9/11.
Yes,
right.
And I'm like, what is happening? And they announced basically they've got a peace deal. So I shared that just to say that the president had to leave the room pretty quickly. We didn't get time to really mingle with him afterwards, but I did get, and this is, one of the coolest experiences of my life. People made the left-wing media made a lot of him calling me very attractive because I said that I made the joke that I'm the one who brought up my looks. I made the joke that getting rid of life is better without TDS. I said something to the effect of I'm, happier, healthier, more successful, and I might even be a little more attractive.
So he was playing off of you, which was perfect.
Very attractive. And the left-wing media characterized that as creepy or whatever.
Oh my God. Give me a
I'm not
break.
offended, okay?
I love it.
My husband's like, the president of the United States thinks my wife's very attractive. It's just funny. But so he's leaving, right? And I'll just always remember this. He's leaving and he comes across our side and he's shaking hands really quick going down and he stops and he does how sometimes with world leaders, he'll pull them in.
Yeah.
So he takes my hand, he pulls me in and then he gives me one of his shoulder taps. He says, good job. Very good job. And
God
in that
bless
moment,
him.
I felt like he was a proud father.
Yes.
And so these sort of, creepy vibes that they were saying. I was like, no, he was proud of me, and it was a very nice moment. And so, no, just a very, and again, I think a year ago, I would have been offended. I wouldn't have laughed. And that just shows the sort of change as you really enjoy his personality. I will also say that, gosh, being a member of the White House press pool must be just awful. Because if you watch that roundtable, man, they got it from all sides. They're just like a battered group of humans. And I kind of felt bad for them, but
kind of not.
Like, no, not
but kind of
really.
not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. The whole story about him calling you attractive is interesting because it does lead to my last question, which is totally frivolous and has nothing to do with Antifa. I just want to know your hair regimen. That's
right.
all.
It's gorgeous.
I know. I get to meet Scott Pressler on Thursday, and I'm so excited to have a hair off with him because he's so known for his hair. And I'm very known for my hair, and he's in town, and I'm like, we need to sort this out once and for all, whose hair is better.
You're going to have a hair off. It's amazing.
It's gorgeous.
I always tell people I love my little, this is a commercial, yes, my shark curling thing.
My daughter has that. My
Gosh,
daughter
I
has
love
a
that
shark.
thing.
Yeah.
And always pin it. I pin my curl until it cools, and then I take it out. If you don't pin it, the curl's not going to last.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
that's the hair advice that I have. But
my daughter has hair like a lot like yours, and must be the key, and the shark is the tool.
It is, yeah. And I was in TV for 10 years, and they made me cut my hair into a bob, and it was long and blonde when I came, and then they cut it up to here. So for my wedding, I started to grow it out, and my husband was just ecstatic. And I just kept going. I'm like, I have no one telling me what to do. I'm not going to cut it again. And so I just let it grow. But yes, thank you.
It's gorgeous. It's
It
gorgeous.
is.
And so
It's
are you.
awesome.
You're very, very attractive, Brandi.
Yeah.
And we know that because the president
And
said
that's
so.
not at all creepy.
Not at all creepy.
No.
We so appreciate you being with us. Thank you so
Totally.
much.
No, I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed it. And look at us three blondes just ruling the world.
Totally. Thank
We're
you,
trying.
Brandi.
Thank you.